I'm thrilled to have Ian Cloke, the COO of Afentra. Thank you so much for your time and thank you for
No,
being
thank you for
here.
inviting us.
I'd just like to start off with following your acquisition of assets in Angola's Block 305 and
Mhm.
305A, what key milestones are you targeting for production growth? And how do you plan to maximize the value of the mature fields to ensure that there's long-term profitability and sustainability?
I think the key thing, Block 305 and 305A is three deals that we've been working on: Senegal, INA, and Azul Energy, which brought us up to 30%. It's a giant field, 3.5 billion barrels oil in place, of which 1.3 have been recovered. Key thing is, how do you manage the capital expenditure, because there is a wealth of projects. So it really starts about optimizing and making sure the production baseline is sustained. So that's what we've been working on or the operator Senegal has been working on with the JV, the joint venture partnership, for the last couple of years. Investing in the infrastructure, so power, water, and gas metering, and then light well interventions, so production increases. So this over the last year and a bit, we've increased production by about 30% to over 20,000 barrels a day. And then as we look to the future, the next 2 to 3 years, we're starting to think about infill drilling, heavy workovers, and then satellite discovery developments, all the while we're trying to reduce emissions. So gas export, reduction of gas emissions is a big one for the partnership.
And with the evolving landscape of oil and gas investments and the growing focus on energy transition, how do you plan to balance this traditional oil and gas
Mhm.
operations, with emerging styles like renewable energy?
Yeah, I think the energy transition is very much a journey, and for Africa, you're looking at a journey over many years. Probably actually energy addition rather than just purely replacement. As we look at it, we balance the socioeconomic side with the environmental side. You can't have one without the other. And so we look more from an asset perspective of how do we make an impact. There's a lot of assets in West Africa which are going to produce for many years. They're key for the countries, providing employment. They also have quite high emissions. So when we look at assets, we look at how do we maintain the production, increase it, but at the same time reduce emissions. So that's one of the targets on 305 with Senegal. Is it does flare quite a lot, so that greenhouse emissions profile is quite high, but with proper reduction, it can go to zero flaring. So we look at the assets rather than investing purely in renewables, is about how do we invest in the assets, how do we reduce the emissions as these assets produce for another 20 odd years.
Yeah. And given the current trend of IOCs divesting their smaller assets, how does Afentra plan to leverage the opportunity to attract investment and maximize production in Africa's legacy oil and gas markets?
So Afentra is actually quite young. We set it up in 2021. And why did we set it up? Well, the management team, myself, Paul, Anastasia, had been through energy transitions or industrial transitions in the North Sea and the Gulf of Mexico. So these big assets that you see in West Africa, in the North Sea, they've gradually, over 25 years plus, gone from big companies to smaller companies, more innovative, different ways of approaching them. So we saw that in 21 as a journey that was going to happen through West Africa. But the landscape needs companies, and there weren't that many companies. So we saw an opportunity. We felt that what was needed was responsible independence, that when the major looking to divest could hand over, sell an asset to a player who could look after the asset, responsibly manage it, reduce the emissions. And then from a country perspective, the regulator, the government, would be looking at the company coming in and could see that the major was handing over the operations to a responsible independent company. So that's sort of the opportunity that we saw. It was based on a lot of we've got a lot of depth of working in Africa, the team over many years, West Africa and East Africa, and really taking the skill set that was built up in the North Sea and applying it in an African context.
It's fantastic. And, as we were chatting earlier, you mentioned that, this is your fourth time at African Energy Week. What are your thoughts on the event? What value does the event have to Afentra?
I mean, the size of it this year is wow, isn't it?
Yeah.
From the small beginnings in 21 in the aquarium and to now we're in the convention centre and you're looking at how many people are coming. It has gone from a very small sort of event to now, I think, probably one of the biggest ones on the continent. It brings everybody here now, not only our host countries. So yesterday met with the Angolans, whether it's AMPG or Senegal, our partners, partners up in Angola, other potential partners or regulators, ministers in West Africa. And then we had a couple of panels yesterday. We've got another panel tomorrow. So good dialogue and discussion and hopefully generating solutions for some of the challenges out there.
Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a productive time this week.
Thank you very much for the invitation to come.